All right, we are at the top of the hour. We're going to go ahead and get started with today's presentation. My name is Earl Lang. I'm Senior Integrated Marketing Manager here at Deed Solutions, and I'm going to be moderating today's webcast. Really quick, what I want to do before I pass it over to today's speaker, Mary Beth, who will take you through the bulk of today's content, is just go over some quick housekeeping items with you so you have a better idea of how today's event is structured. Again, like I said, I'll be moderating. I'll keep an eye on chat throughout the event. Phone lines have been muted. The reason for that is just to, more than anything, eliminate background noise. We don't want that to discourage participation from you, though, so please use that chat feature to submit questions to us. We will have time at the end designated to hopefully jump into a few of those today. Other than that, that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to Mary Beth, who will take you through the bulk of today's presentation.
Hi, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here with you today. One of the reasons that I'm so glad that we're doing this is because I think we're going to be talking about one of the biggest concerns that we're facing in the workforce today. And for those of you that are dealing day-to-day with operations, I really want to speak to you. But to kind of give you a feel of what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to cover a little bit about what does today's workforce look like, and then kind of integrate that to talk about the labor market. Then we're going to move on to what are those skill sets that we need to grab right now. And we're even going to talk a little bit about technology. And then we're going to come back and address some things under teams. As we close out, we're going to be talking about the technology and how that needs to be elevated to your role and your team's work. And then, as Earl said, we're going to have some time for some questions and answers. So here we go. Before we even start, I'd like for you to think about your organization and the biggest concern that you might have today with your workforce. Now, I just put some comments here talking about the retiring baby boomers, the training of current employees to meet the technical skills that we're facing, the whole thing about different generations working together, and then implementing that with new technology. And then we have to talk about recruiting and retaining the top employees that we have. Now, hopefully you kind of raised your hand for those that really concern you, maybe some more than others. So here we go. Let's begin, and we're going to talk about the state of today's workforce. So what are we talking about? What do we know? Well, right now, we know that we have a little over 7.6, we're going towards 8 million unfulfilled jobs with less workers to fill them. We think right now the statistics show that we have somewhere around 6.5 million people that are looking for work. But we only have a small quadrant here that does not match what positions we have based on the employees that we have out there looking for jobs. And then on top of that, I think this is a staggering statistic. 50% of all of our operations personnel are set to retire in the next 10 years. So here's what I'd like for you to do. Think a moment. Look around your team. Look at those that you're working with. And take a look at where do you think on the spectrum your team lies. Because the other important thing is about 1 in 5 Americans are going to be 65 or older by 2030. Where is our workforce going to come from? Now, I want to introduce you to Susan and Chuck. They're very good friends of mine, as you can see. But this is typically what we might be seeing right now. We see Susan at her workstation. We see Chuck working in his workstation. These people have knowledge. They have historical knowledge that at some point here, they're either going to take with them or their systems to retain it. Look again around your operations. Where do these people sit? And how is it that you're prepared to meet this new challenge? Here's a question that when I was a CEO, that I ask myself, or it seeped into my brain every night when my head hit the pillow, is what is keeping me awake at night? So my question for you is, what in your workforce is keeping you awake at night? Well, here's what I thought are things that concern me and hopefully concern you, is how will we replace the soon-to-be retiring employees? If we know that we have more jobs than we have people out there to work, where are we going to find those people to fill the gap? And I call that minding the gap. And then how do I handle competition out there for skilled labor? If we have all of these jobs open and only a certain cadre of folks that might fit in there, how do we deal with that? And then on top of that, how am I going to find my next well-qualified, whether it be a technician or inspector, to fill this very needed position? And how am I going to learn the skills needed to grow my career personally so I can do my best work? We need you, and we need those people like you to be able to share and to be successful and do your best work. Then we have to figure out our team, because it isn't all just about us. Sometimes we think it is, but it's about our team. And what are those new technologies that we need to get our arms around? Now, I know you've always heard that we have to address change because change is all around us. We live with change. But I want to center in on today's workforce. In the midst of all of this, we need to believe that there is opportunity, because we need to work within this changing workforce. This is a new paradigm for us. We've not seen this in generations. But I also like to challenge you, not only is change an opportunity, but we have to think about how do we create and how do we help image and imagine where we're going. Now, I know that may not seem congruent when we're going to be talking about technology too, but we have to be able to mix change with how we can make it reasonable, how it is consistent, and how we can sustain it. So let's talk a minute about the state of the labor market. What's that look like? Well, 10 million shortfall of workers for the next 10 years. Now, I think that's pretty daunting, and I'm hoping that you too understand the enormous impact that has with us. I can't emphasize enough that 50% of our operations folks are set to retire in the next 10 years. Now, we may think that 10 years is a far out number, but starting today, the clock is ticking. On top of that, 93 average days to fill a position. That's 3 months, folks. It is very, very difficult. And on top of that, recruiting and hiring and training is a very expensive transition. But we do have challenges. And as we talked about as I started, challenges lead to opportunities. But here's one of the first challenges, and I learned this very, very early on. Our historical knowledge is really gone when certain employees leave our employment. We talk about having the keys to the castle. And those folks, when they leave, no matter what knowledge we think they have on paper, and I got to tell you, I go back a long ways. That started with spreadsheets. And you know, spreadsheets are manually in and they're manually out. So that historical knowledge leaves. And I remember in my first position as a CEO, and I had a facility manager that left, and I thought my world ended because we did not have all the historical knowledge that we needed. So that leads me to the next one. You know, we hear all the time about the challenges about trade jobs. Where are we going to train? How are we going to train? And we're beginning to address that. The question is going to be, can we address it enough to help us in this next 10 years with so many people retiring? Now, we know that we can always look to contract work, and I'm going to come back and talk a little bit about that. But as we look at that, there is a cost that's involved. So those are a few of our challenges. Kind of think about those in terms of your position. You know, this is not going to be new when I tell you. We've all been told that we need to do more with less. Even when we had loss, we were always told we have to do more with less. So we know we have this challenging labor market. We know we can't change it. We can't change the retirement rate, but we can focus on the tools. We can identify the tools that we need so that we can excel right now. How do we do that? Well, let's talk about that. One of the first things is we have to document our work. I very quickly tell people all the time, what we don't document didn't happen. Let me say that again. What we don't document has never happened because we don't have proof points. We don't have conversation points. We don't have training points. And more than anything else, we don't have accountability. So we need to make sure that information passes from hand to hand and that we have good digital documentation. That's critical, folks. That goes back to our work orders and our PMs and everything that is corrective in our daily operational tasks. If we can document and know what's happening day by day, that allows us to work towards tomorrow. And to know what our equipment, to know what our asset orientation is. Lots of us have old buildings, new buildings, and someplace in between. How do we know, besides, I think so, if we don't have a digital plan? Utility usage is huge. You know, what is our utility usage? Where is it coming from? What do those costs look like? What do those savings look like? Well, a digital, documented plan can help us with that. Some of you are having to deal with setups and teardowns for meetings and functions in your organization. And those cost time and money and are related to good customer service. So if we have a way to document explicitly what's done, what needs to be done, how is it done, how do we communicate it, it eases the pain of making sure that our customers are happy. We're in a different world when it comes to compliance. We all deal with different kinds of compliance. We all deal with insurance issues. And to have good safety records helps us a great deal when we get pushed to the limits and we have something that happens. And we need to make sure that we have the right records on file that helps document what we have done so well. Now, I hope that all kind of makes sense to you. So here's kind of an illustration of how we at Dude Solutions like for you to document your work, because it allows us to schedule what needs to be done. It allows us to identify the assets. And even more important, if you have multiple locations, we can locate it. But here's the one that I hang my hat on, is who's doing the work and when is that scheduled. Dude Solutions really believes in creating a task that makes sense. You heard me say just a little bit ago, I don't believe in doing work that doesn't make sense. And this takes my thought process and makes it very definitive. And then on top of that, I have a dashboard that I can look at that gives me, before I go home or first thing in the morning, allows me to see what's happening. I have a better chance of making sure that everybody as part of that team is directed in the right direction. Documentation is really crucial, and we're very proud here at Dude Solutions that we can help you with that. We can make you good. Now, on top of that, though, we need to be able to track what we're doing. You need to know when work is being completed every day and what's not getting completed, because we know not every day is the same. I always call it Murphy's Law. Murphy always comes to work at some point, and we need to be able to manage Murphy. And one of the ways that we can do it is through our technology, through our software, because it helps for us to see the problem today and not down the road where then we have to react. Documentation allows us to deal with the present, not with having to deal with what may learn down the path that's going to make decisions hard today. So we need to know what the resources that we need. And here's the one that I think sometimes we don't do enough about, is we need to identify those roadblocks. But we need to make sure they're real. Not things that we have in our mind, but we need to make sure the roadblocks are actually roadblocks and we're addressing them in a right fashion. Obviously, we need to know when to hire. We need to figure out what are the skill sets and how is it that we're going to look for these folks. Where are they going to come from? How do we contract out things? Oh boy, here's the one I really wanted to point out to you. How is it that we communicate the appropriate items that we want to talk about, whether it be status or progress? You know, technology is great, and it provides us a way to work more efficiently. But in this case, technology doesn't communicate. We're going to talk about working in how we work in teams, how we work together. The data that's coming out and the new research is saying, you know, we're not very good at communication. We don't communicate what we need to be communicating, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And in a little bit, I'm going to talk in more detail. But we need to be better communicators on where we are, where we want to go, what is our progress. Does that make sense to you? Do you have people like that? So this is an example of how we might track and analyze. Hopefully all of you are familiar with this. You're working on it. This is your tool. You're able to watch and know what is going on. You also can prioritize as to, is this low-hanging fruit or is this an emergency? And probably most of you can tell me more about that than I can. We said about change. Change is all around us. But it's how we view change because it's inevitable. So we want to make the training processes that we go through, make sure that they're efficient and they're beneficial. You know, we can put lots of things down on paper. But how is it that we train our team? Because we're only as good as everybody that's in the team. So we need to focus on what's important. Now, these are things that we here at Dude think are important. Obviously, technology, highly important. But we also think that within that technology, the processes, the routines are what we need to make sure that we're doing 100% of the time. Now, let me come back. I want to say something that I want to emphasize. It does not make any sense if we are investing in software or we are investing in people that we may say that this is our protocol, this is our expectation, but in practice, we only do this 50% of the time. Folks. We are committed to this 100% of the time. That's where we get our efficiencies. We need to understand our facilities and our assets. In most of our membership organizations, the highest asset that we have is our facilities. And, you know, those are the dollars that allow us to do the work we need to do. Those are a tremendous amount of assets. In the YMCA Book of Business, we have, as an entity in the Y, over $1 billion in physical assets. $1 billion. That's huge. And again, we talk about when we train our team that we need to understand that we've talked recently, this has all been about hard skills. So let me change gears here, and I want to talk a little bit about how we train, what we need to train in soft skills. So what are soft skills? What are those things? Well, such things as creativity, persuasion. This is one that I love, and one where I think that we need the most work is collaboration. And the other one is adaptability, and then we come down to time management. Those are the top soft skills, in my opinion. And here's why they're important. Because we can generate as many reports as we want, but if we're not able to work with our teams in having active persuasion, you know, I really feel this way. Joe, how do you feel? And Joe says, I really feel this way. Well, then how are we going to collaborate? I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to get into debate here, but we're right now facing some serious issues in how is it that we collaborate? Because we've become kind of a society that says, I have to win all. But collaboration is really about Joe winning a little bit and Pete over here perhaps winning a little bit. That's collaboration. You know, we're putting the two things together so that we come out with something that's going to work. All of these can help lead to improved retention. And that, at the end of the day, is what we want to do. So, okay, if I move too fast, well, hopefully not. We're going to talk now about the state of our skill set. So what is this that we've been talking about? Well, we've talked to organizations, and 80% of organizations agree that there's a skills gap. Well, isn't that easy to say? We have a skills gap. Now, what are we going to do about it? We talked a little bit, and here's another statistic. 108 million workers hold jobs that require some moderate or high digital knowledge. I got to tell you, that's a whole lot, and that's going to continue to grow. 40% say changing skills requirements will have the biggest impact over our jobs in the next 5 years. I think you know that, but I'm not sure that you have learned it in this concept. 40%. So we need to really focus in on what that means. Now, Deloitte study says that the key skills to succeed in today's workforce are really pretty simple. There's just 3 of them: technical, digital, and soft skills. But the piece of this is it does not mean everyone on your team, every individual has to have all 3 of this. This is where the collaboration, the adaptability comes together. This is the challenge, to figure out how do we implement all of this. So I want to insert here, and I guess I'm always inserting for those of you that know me, is that everything is not top down, bottom up. Everything that we're talking about in teams, I want you to think about this as an oval. All of this goes around. At different times, there is a leader in the middle, and that leader can change if, in fact, that we have a team that has a variety of skill sets. Technical skills are critical to our operations, so we have to figure out what we are lacking. And we can do that by seeking, training opportunities can be internal, they can be external. In the Y space, you can reach out to somebody that is in another facility. You can ask them. Or we can always find somebody that we can bring in and train. Technical skills, these are the basic things of our operations. We need to know how they work, how we fix them, how much money it takes, how much time. Technical skills are always be a part of what we have to have as our operation. But we now have digital skills, and this is a time where we can grow our team's digital skill set as much as possible, because we understand we have smartphones, we have tablets, we have everything going on. And for those of us or those that are not real savvy, there's all kinds of ways that we can learn more than what we have. But digital skills are a must. Digital skills help those piles of paper on our desk. It allows us to be more efficient with the knowledge that we need to make the decisions that have to be made. And we at DUDE feel very strongly about that, because we are your very best friends. We want you to be as good as you can be. So now I come back, we've talked a little bit about the hard skills, again coming back to the soft skills of where we're talking about effective communication. Now, the one that I didn't talk about, there's 2 of them, is listening. My experience and what I read about, listening is something that we don't do very well also. Why is that? Well, we're so busy thinking about what we want to say or communicate, we don't listen. We don't do good active listening to what somebody is telling us. Statistics say we only hear about 1 in 5 words. 1 in 5 words. There's a lot of words in there that could change our thought process, but maybe we're not hearing them. So if we're not listening and hearing and being able to respond back, communication is a cycle. We have to think, we have to speak, we have to listen, and it goes around. But also to be able to do that, we need to have critical thinking members on our team. Those that can think about how is it that we do things and how do we do them the best way possible. So ask yourself, how in your team can you develop your soft skills? Because many times it doesn't make any difference what level of a team member you are. The effectiveness is how is it that you communicate your needs in the best way possible. Make sense? Now, let's move on and let's talk a minute about the state of technology. So what do we know about today's technology? Well, 95% of all organizations agree that a digital workplace is important. We know that. 73% of organizations say 80% of their apps will be SaaS by 2020. Well, that's not very far away, 73%. Now, there's always an offshoot. In membership organizations, what are we trying to do? We want to make sure that we have customer satisfaction. That's important because we're not manufacturing widgets. People are our products. So 45% of organizations report improved customer satisfaction as a result of a digital workplace because we're taking out so many of the problems that our members come and complain about. And I know each and every one of you you have a litany of what that is about. But we also need to talk about next steps. So how is it that we embrace technology? Well, I don't put up just a slide and say, let's embrace it, it's going to happen, we're going to build into it. No, it's a process because technological change is really a fact of life. And if we don't adapt to it, we're going to be left behind. We're going to become dinosaurs, or perhaps non-existent. So we need to make sure every skill that you have begins with willingness to try something new. So, I was thinking about this, and I thought about where in my life have I put the brakes on, and where is it that, I put my feet into a pail of cement. Can you think of those times? Well, those are the times that now as I reflect back, that I was a process blocker. So think about this. We need to make sure that we're willing to accept change. So how is it that we do that with our teammates and those that are around us? Because it doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to. Now, we here at Dude Solutions have a very big footprint. We have a lot of clients. We have a lot of users. We collect data all the time. We have so much data that I'm not even sure what we have, but we have lots of it. We know a number of work orders. We can talk about our buildings. We can talk about our inventory, and you can see it there. The reason that we show this to you is because you, as our customers, have helped us build where we are now so that we can help you take it the next step. We understand that software is always evolving. Our work and asset management is continually working to upgrade to meet your needs so that you can look at your PMs and all of your assets. And more than that, and I want to talk about this just 1 minute, is the capital forecasting. A lot of us deal with capital campaigns. Once upon a time, I can remember sitting in a board meeting, and one of my board members said to me, well, how is it that you know that we need a new HVAC system? And I look to my facility manager and I say, well, because we think we do. That doesn't hold water anymore. It's data. And by tracking our assets, knowing when they have come in, knowing who's worked on them, knowing the dollars that we have placed into, for instance, an HVAC system, allows us to be better doers with our financial resources. Same thing with energy management. We're now learning that it's not waiting for a bill to come. We can begin to look at trends. There's ways that we can now manage how is it our energy is used in our facilities. And what and what are those assets that we've captured that are not energy efficient. Even going to such things as event management so that we can be better planners, so that we're not at a door when a group comes in and says, we have this room at such and such a time, and we say, oh, really? It helps us, again, to better utilize our facilities and those that work in this arena. Again, technology is about making us more efficient. I talked a lot about teams and using teams, and teams when, using our solutions to be bigger and better. And here's kind of what we came up with. We know that by using Dude, by being a good team worker, that we have time savings and we have increased productivity. We don't have to, we know this. And we also know that if our workflow is organized and it's just not thrown up in the air, that improved internal processes make us much better. Think about, are you one of those persons that on Sunday night, it's about 9 o'clock at night and you're beginning to think about the next day and your heart beats a little faster, you kind of feel that sweat coming? Well, part of that is because we're not set. We don't have the processes in place that allows us to have continuity in what we do. So the ability to work from anywhere is great because we now have the cloud-based software solutions. And I think that's coming in the future because we can do more. Talked a little bit about the strategic capital planning and cost savings. When we talk it doesn't make any difference what leadership group you're in or what team you're in. This impacts all of us. And by having the detailed reporting, we can become more data-driven all of the time. So these are things that at the end of the day, you can work towards. Again, when we talk about highlights and benefits, we need to be that kind of a leader in our groups that allow our teams to see how technology can solve problems. And at the end of the day, if we can make their jobs easier, I think everybody's jumping up and down. So when we talked about making things win-win, if we have earlier involvement, we have buy-in. And buy-in doesn't always mean that you bring donuts to a meeting. Buy-in means that you have the proper communications with groups or individuals all the time. And that equals your win-win. And creating champions. I love champions. I love those people that can talk. I don't always need to talk to be a champion, but I want to empower people to be the very best that they can be at all times. And we can do that by working and training and communicating and listening, because at the end of the day, we want them to be successful. If we can retain our employees, we have a better chance of meeting the changing needs of what's going on. Ongoing support should be provided at all times for everyone, because training needs to happen. Training can be informal training. Training can be sitting down across from somebody and helping to explain a concept or helping somebody with a question. Training doesn't have to be formalized. Training is when you're having the crucial conversations that you need that are going to help your team be better. The state of teams, let's talk about that a little bit. Well, 25% of the workplace will be made up of Gen Zs by 2022. Now, that can either be scary or that can really be a challenge. We know that the Gen Z, just to give you an idea, those are usually the 20-year-olds coming out. They like large networks, but they totally lack, work experience. And here's where the communication, for them, communication is digital. If you take a look at the other end of the spectrum, and you take those that are 50% or 50 or older, they love to have the face-to-face communication. So we have this challenge of bringing everybody together. 21 to 25, the age of employees, mentoring most appeals to is the younger age. I just said that. And then again by the 50 plus. So you see, we're not that far apart. It's a matter of how do we draw that dotted line. And 86% of our employees cite poor communication for workplace failure. That's pretty impactful. It means because of our inability to communicate all things. You know, we think about, oh, we only want our employees to know this, that, and the other. But if our employees understand what is going on, we don't have to give away the state secrets, but if we can involve them to know what it is we're all working for, we have a much better chance of getting buy-in. I hear this all the time, that we have a friction of multiple generations working together. I think we have opportunities because we have more places on the bus for people to help drive change. We have different people with different levels of career experiences. Think about that. From the 20-year-old to the 50-plus, those are great experience that we can draw from. We have different tenures from people who have worked. We have different levels of people with technology, different levels of communication styles, all brought together that if they're in the right seats on the bus, you can drive anything. You can drive change. You can drive empowerment. So what do we do with all of this? Is know that we are more alike than we're different. We are. Because we all want to do our best. We want the best for our organizations. So to drive that and to be successful, we need to find common ground. Everybody has common ground. And you know what? I think there's one key to finding common ground, and that's respect. Is to be respectful of who we are, what we say, and how we do it. And once we understand that through all the generations, I think the connection to be heard is better. I think it increases our team morale because we're willing to recognize that everybody brings something to the plate. I think another one is everyone is looking for learning opportunities, and everybody wants to be better, and everybody understands that we're good at something. So if we're good at something, shouldn't we share that, and whether you call that mentoring or whatever, because no matter the age, you know, at one point or another in this oval that we have, we're either the teacher or we're the student, and it goes back and forth. But if we always have to be the teacher, then we're missing out on bringing consensus. We're bringing new thoughts and ideas into the team. We need to use the strengths of our team and take turns being what we are. And we have to remember that everyone is on the same team. And we need to look for mentorship opportunities wherever we can find them. You know, it costs more dollars to train new employees than keeping what we have. So let's retain our talent. Let's allow others to transfer internally faster with shorter learning curves if that's the point. We need to promote the flexibility and what is it that we can do to help people be good. And maybe that isn't sitting behind a desk 8 to 5. And we need to take away as many roadblocks as we can so that we can get work done. And we need to talk about retirement and just not somebody comes in and puts their retirement papers on our desk. We need to think through and how do we fill those holes and be prepared. So here it is, folks. Here's the bottom line. Many fields are changing. We know that the large percent of the workforce is retiring and that we need to fill that. And we need to figure out how to do that. Change inevitable, imagine creativity, working with your teams. Future-proof and risk mitigate your work through technology tools so that we can take these extra steps. And it's not about taking one step. It's about always working to move up. And we've got to be part of the change in a way that's positive. Because at the end of the day, do you ever think about what your legacy is going to be? I would encourage you, whether it's today or whatever, just take a piece of paper or, you know, your notes or whatever, and think about what do you want your legacy to be as a person and as part of the team, and are they the same? Also want to finish off by saying our Dude University is May 3rd through the 6th. I'm going to be there, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of you. And again, I have such a thrill when I have the opportunity to be part of an interaction with all of you. So I want to thank you for being on the webinar today. And I'm going to turn it back here to Earl. He has a few things to do with you.
Thank you very much, Mary Beth. Awesome job taking us through that. What I'm going to do real quick before we transition to the Q&A is just launch a quick poll. And what we're throwing out there is Mary Beth covered a lot of ground today, a lot of really positive takeaways, and there's a lot of different areas where the Dude and Dude Solutions can plug in to help you with a lot of what she talked about today. So if it's this poll provides you with an opportunity to let us know if you'd like more information about how we can help with things like streamlining work and asset management, controlling utility costs through energy, helping schedule with events, or the capital planning that she hit on, doing some forecasting there, or all of the above, or do you. This is just an opportunity for you to kind of raise your hand and just let us know what we can do to streamline things for you and help streamline follow-up after this event. We'll leave that up for just a couple more seconds while we transition to the Q&A. So Mary Beth had a few questions come in throughout the event today. One of the first ones that came in is several members of my team are a little bit older, getting closer to retirement. They've been a little bit resistant to software in the past. Obviously, there's benefits to get the analysis out of the software, but how do I really get my team to embrace new tools that they're kind of resistant to?
That's a great question, and there's not a real easy answer to that. I think part of that is I hope that there is a sense of respect. I think it starts with respect of the individual and what they bring to the table. We know at the bottom, the bottom line is that they have to embrace technology, and we don't want to bring them pulling by their hairs to get them to that point. I always have to believe that if we have the right people in place, they want to do the right thing. So here's my suggestion. When we're working with folks that aren't really adapting to technology, don't have them eat the whole pizza at one time. Give them bits and pieces. Let them see successes in small bites. You don't have to give them this whole pizza and say, well, here it is, and here's what we've got to do. Give them small bits so they have a taste of success. And encouragement, allow them to make mistakes. Here, I got to tell you this personally. The hardest thing I have is accepting when I make mistakes or I'm a failure. That's the same with people moving towards technology and understanding and embracing it. It's not that we're stupid. It's just that we're uncomfortable. But if you take me step by step, I'm going to get there. So that's kind of, Earl, my best suggestion on that. And there's many others. And if anybody would like to talk further about that, they can make contact with me.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Thank you for that context. I think another one that came in that's very similar to that is, we've got a generation, many in the workforce right now that are headed towards retirement. And with new tools can be part to help bridge that gap, right? But when you've got that historical knowledge that's so very valuable to your organization, and then, it's at risk of walking out, what are some of the best practices you can recommend to kind of reduce risk or limit liability with that knowledge walking out the door?
Well, I have a couple thoughts on that. And here's my first one. And the analogy I'm going to use is the suitcase. When we start in our first job, we have a suitcase and it's pretty empty. And as we work through our career, we pack that suitcase with all kinds of knowledge and experiences, all good and bad. And then we come up to the retirement, and we have this full suitcase. And all of a sudden, in kind of what we've looked at as retirement, is we close the lid of the suitcase and we zip it up and we take it home and we put it in the closet. Now, what a waste. There are so many opportunities that if we understand, we talked a bit about that, and if we're planning for retirement, there are ways that we can unpack that suitcase before that person walks out with it. Now, maybe they still want to work part-time. Maybe they want to be mentors, or maybe they're just done. But it's about planning. It's about, planning, whether that's a year or 2 years. At some point, everybody's probably going to retire. At some point. So there's different ways. So we could work with people and phase in and still show them that they're valuable. We don't want them to be lame ducks. We don't want them a month before they leave, be sitting at their desk and moving their mouse. That's what we don't want. We want them to feel, because they have so many resources, we just don't want to turn the lights out, do we? So part of that is allowing perhaps better upfront phasing so we have what we need. At the back end is allowing people perhaps to come in. Have you ever thought about those that are retiring, to bring them in for a working lunch or, break and say, hey, we've got new members on our team. Can you share with us this, that, and the other? There is no better ways to make people feel good is by asking them to share their knowledge. And what a great way to capture information. And Earl, there's many more ways to do that, but that would be my initial thoughts on that particular question.
No, that's perfect. Thank you for that. We'll end on one last one. I think that kind of helps tie together a lot of what you talked about in the last two questions, and that's really focused on how can you encourage a team to really leave a legacy, and more importantly, when they're not seeing the value of leaving a legacy, what do you do about that?
Well, a couple of thoughts on that. And, we talked about the generations, and different generations think about legacy different. And let me give you an example. We have, when Silicon Valley and all of that erupted, we had a core of people that, kind of changed our workforce because they worked in projects. So they may work like dogs for let's say 6 weeks to 6 months, and then they're done. And their legacy really was to finish that project, and then you moved on to the next one. The other piece of this is, do you work to live or live to work? And what is your philosophy on that? And the other piece that I just want to hit on, and then I'm going to try to turn this all around, is once upon a time, we talked about careers. And careers were, that's what we identified with, was kind of our self-worth was identified by career. Well, that doesn't necessarily leave with a legacy. I think a legacy is leaving a piece of ourselves. Now, that can be identified as maybe you brought the organization so far, but maybe the legacy was being the greatest team member or providing leadership or whatever it may be. I can't fathom anybody in the generations nowadays not wanting to have a positive legacy. I can't imagine anybody wanting to leave and say, well, I wanted to be the worst employee ever and I succeeded. I don't think that's the role. I think that if we're working in environments that are respectful, and if we are in environments where we look at work as a positive and not a negative. But all of that comes back, Earl, I would say, to a lot of mentoring, allowing people to be empowered, being willing to change, understanding that adaptability, I think in any circumstance, any arena, has to be cultivated. And at the end of the day, whatever your legacy is, you want to be the best, whatever, or you want your legacy to be thought of as a wonderful human being. Identify that legacy early on and work towards it.
Absolutely. Well said. We'll go ahead and wrap up. Looks like we've gotten to most of the questions that we've got. We'll give you a little bit of time back in your day. I want to again thank Mary Beth for taking us through that great presentation today. And thank you all for attending, taking time out of your day. Hopefully you guys find this as valuable to take home as we hope you do. But certainly be on the lookout for future invites from us for future webinars. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks, everyone.